Okay, this is going to be my hopefully brief exploration of how I've just changed my phone, part of my 2021 New Year's resolution, to see what I could do about spam calls, telemarketers, and all the things that keep my phone ringing all day long when I'm working from home. And there's a website called Tel-Sentry.com, which you can also get to by typing in plugin block. That's P-L-U-G, then the letter N, then the word block.com. That redirects to Tel-Sentry, and that is the Sentry product of phone unwanted call blockers. This is, I think, their older model. This is the current model, the one listed as new. It's identified in many places as the 3.1. Yeah, they got the 2.2. That's, maybe it won't show me anything. Yeah, that one. New and improved, but it's no longer new. They should update that. And then the 3.1. New, and they really mean it because it's yellow. So, blocks 100% of all unwanted callers. Well, that's optimistic, but some reports I've read said that it's definitely in the high 90s based on, empirical observation of it in use. And caller ID is required. I think that means that for this to work, your phone service that you have needs to have a caller ID feature on it. Create your own greeting, set up a whitelist in minutes with a keypad. That other model, the 2.2, does not have a keypad, and that may be the major improvement. The bigger display, the addition of a keypad, and more buttons, so you don't have as many of these double function buttons. Probably it's just a nicer user interface, and probably has more memory and some other junk. But I wanted to get some support about some of these additional features, so I'm going to be reading up on that. But mostly I'm going to be using the manual that came with the product. Just a short manual. It's almost a getting started manual. I'm hoping that there are additional resources on here. Not sure how to get at them. Buy now. So they list some new features. There's a YouTube video on it. Yeah, so differences. Whitelist setup is keypad entry with the new one. The old one, it's an up and down entry. The warning message or outgoing message or OGM, you can record a custom OGM in any language. On the old version, it's a pre-recorded one. You can select English, German, or Spanish. A voice message, it doesn't say coming in or going out, but I guess that means that you can record your, I don't know what that means. Be nice if it was clearer. So there's a user guide. Here's what it does. Sentry is a checkpoint to screen all incoming calls. Sentry's checkpoint has two lines of defense. First is a voice warning message that tells solicitors to leave. Tell legitimate callers to come in by pressing 0. At this point, 100% robocalls will be stopped. 99% of solicitor calls will leave. The second line of defense is Sentry's blacklist function. You can put any number on Sentry's caller ID list to the blacklist. In reality, the first line of defense is so effective you will rarely need to add a number to the blacklist. For legitimate callers, Sentry lets you create a whitelist. Callers on the whitelist will be allowed in without hearing the warning message. If the caller is on whitelist, Sentry allows the caller to come in without asking. If the caller is not on the whitelist, Sentry will ask all telemarketers, solicitors to hang up, and will tell legitimate callers to press 0 to come in. It kind of said that up above. Put a caller on whitelist is easy. Just find a number on the caller list and press accept. So that's, I guess, a list that, or it's a caller ID list. So it's keeping track of all those calls, and you can just find it and push accept. The first line of defense is so effective you will rarely need to use the blacklist. I think it said it just above that. No robocalls can penetrate Sentry. Tips to best use. Create a whitelist. Your loved ones will pass through Sentry without checks. When used as a junk fax blocker, it blocks all faxes that are not on the whitelist. Well, I don't have a fax, so that's the end of that information. But there is a user guide. Well, that's interesting. 3.1 user guide, version 3 user guide. Mine doesn't exactly say that on it anywhere, so how do you know? This looks just like the one that came with it, so it doesn't have I think it's exactly the same one. Well, maybe not. Yeah, it's broken up to be only 3 pages here, where it's many more pages on the printed one, but it looks like it contains pretty much the same information. So I'm going to save that to the folder on my computer where I keep purchase information, warranty information, and manuals and other user notes that I come up with for practically everything I own that has any complexity to it. Call me a nerd, I am. Call me a geek, probably that's true too. I'm a technologist and I'm methodical. So there. So the phone company's cable comes in here, and it goes into the phone company access side of the box. That translates over into the so-called, whatever they call it, the customer access side of the box, where it's presented to these 4 terminals, the red and the green, which is the ones usually used for the primary line, and then the black and the yellow. The phone company may have the black and the yellow connected, I don't know, but their line comes in through this black lead and then plugs in here with this quick disconnect, and then that goes to these 4 screw terminals. And only the red and the green are connected through this lead, which then comes over here, runs back up, and goes into the old Bell system box, which is probably from the 50s or something, and then it goes through the wall. So there's nothing for me to change in here. I only have the red and the green connected. I was hoping that all 4 wires would be brought out to here through this cable, so I could change lines internally by doing it externally here where it's easy to reach. But that's not going to be the case. So I had made this sort of cheat sheet up years and years ago, documenting all the phone wiring inside my house. I had several notes here. I said a single line from AT&T connected to red and green in the house, yellow and black not connected to any outside wiring or internal equipment. And then I had rewired everything to a set of duplex outlets, and that's duplex phone outlets, not power outlets, of course. I'd done all that wiring probably 25 years ago or something, because at that time I had a fax machine, and I had a splitter system, so it would route the phone calls to either the fax machine or the telephones, depending on what kind of signal it determined was coming in. It wouldn't ring all the phones every time it was a fax call and so on like that. And that worked pretty well, but that required the phone line to be connected to one side of that splitter switcher device, and then all the phones connected to the phone output and the fax machine connected to the fax output of that device. So I kind of back-fed into the other circuit. So I notated here, all duplex outlet sockets wired in parallel with yellow and black, that would be the ones that are less commonly used, on the top socket and marked switched, and red and black on the bottom socket and marked line. And at that time I had 3 loads on the AT&T line. I had a cordless phone base unit, my office phone, and my DSL modem. Well, I haven't had that for a long time. So this is basically the outdoor gray box showing the 2 wires from AT&T coming in. At some point I wrote that on 4/19/15 there were 2 more wires going through here, but maybe I intended to do that and never did it, because I certainly don't see evidence of it now. There used to be an indoor phone disconnect, and I bypassed that on 4/19/15. Up above the ceiling in my basement workshop is a 4-position terminal block. The red and the green wires from the outside box eventually make their way to 2 screws on there, and this is where the parallel 4 lines begin. Paralleled off of that is a duplex phone outlet in my studio room. That's just upstairs from here. Then a wire goes across the basement to the north and goes to a junction box with a test jack that's located below the kitchen, and it branches off in parallel to a duplex phone outlet in my dining room on the north wall. That's the one where my cordless phone base unit is plugged into. That's where the switcher used to be for the fax, and then the old phone jack, which was disconnected long ago, that's still there. Used to have a DSL filter in there, that's scratched out. Anyway, the phone wires continue across the basement going west then to a duplex outlet by the basement stairs, where I have my home security system plugged into. Goes across the basement to the duplex outlet in my office, where my desk phone is plugged into. Used to be my DSL modem was plugged in there, but I don't use that anymore for the computer. And once again they continue across, go to another junction box above my workbench in my shop, where it branches off to a duplex outlet on the south wall under the window of my office. There used to be something there, I don't even remember. Oh yes, I used to have a postage meter that was plugged in there, so I'd added that at some point. And then finally it branches off here to another duplex jack in my master bedroom, and also to a box with a jack located above my basement door. And from there there's a short isolation jumper going to a similar box, and then wires run underground and go out to my garage from my old Chicago payphone that's out there in the garage. And there's the disconnect for that. That's so if there's any problem with the underground wiring going out to the garage and it brings the phone system down, I can easily unplug it there and isolate the wiring inside the house from wiring outside the house. So what I'm kind of figuring I'm going to do, because I essentially have 2 parallel lines wired all the way through the house, and in my kitchen I've got the duplex outlet, and the bottom one is the one that's currently connected to the line.
So that's the one that's going to all the other phones. And then there's this jack, and it goes everywhere too, but I'm only going to use it in this one place in the kitchen or in the dining room for the new Sentry unit. So this is ultimately going to the terminals in my basement above the ceiling, and currently the line from the phone company is going here, AT&T. I'm going to move it to the other two terminals, so now AT&T is on the upper set of outlets, or upper set of jacks in every duplex outlet in the house, and therefore it'll be connected to no phones in the house. And I'm going to put the Sentry here, and its line jack is going to be connected with a jumper to here, and its phone output will be connected with a jumper to here. So AT&T will be connected straight in through the upper circuit, which used to be called the switch circuit. It'll go into the line input of the Sentry. Then the Sentry will decide if the phones should be connected depending on what type of call it is, and that'll go into the bottom jack, and from there it'll go out in parallel to all phones in the house. I won't have to move anything. I just need to make this one adjustment. But the problem is, look where it's at. It's up above a bunch of machine tools in my basement. I'm thinking it's right up there. Matter of fact, there's even a cutout. It's been years since I've been up there, but that's where it's at. So it's going to be a pain to get at. I'm going to have to move at least one tool, my jigsaw. Fun, fun, fun. Pardon the noise, my dishwasher in the kitchen adjacent to here is going. So this is the old phone jack I mentioned from the house was originally built, and this would have been the only phone in the house was plugged into here. This is disconnected. Here's the duplex jack I added 20 plus years ago. As expected, the phone cable from my base unit for my cordless phones is plugged into the lower one. I'm going to unplug it and connect it to the upper one, and then I'm going to take this and go downstairs and swap the wires and make sure it's still working, because that'll prove the rest of the system. Now I added this notation here because I had to scratch my head and remember, but I think now this is obsolete terminology. I still put it on here. Tip, which is supposed to be plus, and ring, which is supposed to be minus. That probably dates from the days of old telephone switchboards. And looking it up online, since I couldn't remember, the tip is green and the ring is negative, or is red, and that's plus and minus, which is counterintuitive because I'd normally think of red as being the plus and green as being the minus, but apparently that's the way it is. Then the second pair, the tip would be black and the ring would be minus. But everything I've read is that that hasn't mattered in over 15 years, and that everything manufactured in recent memory could care less about polarity of the wiring on each pair. Still, I'm going to try to maintain it. So red will go to translate to yellow, and green will translate to black when I move the wires over on this terminal. So I know that this is wiring that I've got, that I put in years ago, goes up across the suspended ceiling in my basement workshop. This is another one. And the only other wire, well, there's this plug lead which doesn't go anywhere. It just came with this junction box or junction board. Then there's this 4 cable wire, which is, or 4 conductor cable, which comes from up above and squeezes behind a duct, and I know I didn't do that. And this is pretty much downstairs from where the phone access portal is. So even though I don't have it marked, I'm sure that's the one coming from there. And the weird thing about it is it does have red, green, black, and yellow in it, but they don't seem to connect anything on the other end.
This also seems to be a different type of wire from what's upstairs, so beats the hell out of me. Somewhere there's probably a junction between this and that, but I'm still pretty confident this is the incoming wiring, so I need to move that around. Okay, so now the red and green wires from the phone company are terminating to my internal system on the yellow and black. Red is going to yellow, green is going to black. And if everything's okay, I should I do get a dial tone. Let me call my cell phone. I got a ring. Yep, that's working. So I was able to call my cell phone from my indoor home cordless phone setup with the phone company wires moved over to the yellow and black internal wiring system. So before I go and button up the rest of these wires here, I'm still going to hook up the Sentry and make sure all that works. I might have to reverse this back. Now, one little snag which I'd half thought about before. I know the back of the Sentry is going to have its line and its phone output, and I already know I can go into my jack, just like I sketched above. I could have just marked that one up, I guess. But I also have my phone, cordless phone, wireless phone base unit. It's got a wire which needs to plug into this, as does this, so I need some sort of splitter. I'm thinking right now I do have a couple of line splitters upstairs, but I don't know if they're splitters or what's the word I want? I don't know if they split out the yellow and black on one and the green and red on the other, or if they just parallel all four lines to the splitter. But these things are these little boxes that look like this, you know, so this plugs into the phone jack, and then you've got two female jacks here. So I'm going to have to do a test with that and make sure that's okay, but I'm thinking I'll just plug one of these things into here, and then I can do this to my wireless phone, and they'll all be tied together in parallel through this. So here's the box it comes in, and in addition to a small user manual, it also comes with a folded piece of paper that has the quick setup instructions. It pretty much just duplicates what's in the manual, but maybe that's there for people who habitually do not even open a manual and are used to looking for quick start guides instead. And I'll note here that it doesn't say anywhere on here that I can see that this is the model 3.1. It mentions it on the website, it mentions it on Amazon's listing, which is where I bought this, but it doesn't actually say that. So that's kind of odd, but I do notice that it says here Tel-Sentry Incorporated, designed in USA, made in China. So at least there's a US company behind it, and they have a questions plugandblock.com, which redirects to Tel-Sentry, and there's an 800 or a 888 number, and there's another tech support number that's listed here. It's a 714 number. Block, scam calls, robocalls, telemarketing calls. Works with all landline phones worldwide. Okay, quick exploration of this unit before I read the manual. First off, it needs, well, start with the front. This is the Sentry, it's the model 3.1, I believe.
even though I don't see where it says that anywhere, but in the advertising it calls it the 3.1. It's apparently the latest one as of 2021. So you've got an LCD display. It reads out a number of things on it. At the upper left will be a indication that the call is being blocked to any calls that do not have a caller ID. And then there will be a number in the middle along the top that says the number of unchecked incoming calls. I'm not sure what unchecked means there. In the upper right corner will be a code, D for default setup, C for custom setup, and off meaning that the Sentry is passing everything except those on the blacklist. And that can be toggled on and off with the this button when you're not actually dialing a number. You can scroll up and down through any entries or options, kind of normal. There is two big color-coded buttons. If a call comes in and you wanted to reject that number and add to the blacklist, you push that, it automatically adds it to the blacklist. If a call comes in and you agree, even though maybe it wasn't something you recognized, once you get the call, you realize it's somebody you want to be able to add to your accepted list, you can push that, automatically does it, I think. There's a delete exit key that's used basically to exit from menus or to back up. And it can also be used by double pressing it to delete an entry. So I think you can scroll through your entries, and then if you double tap this, then it'll delete that entry from the list. There's a record play button, which allows you to record your custom message that'll play to callers, letting them know that they have to do something before the call will go through. That is, go through to your phones. The OGM DC gives warning message options. D for default, C for custom, and that again appears up here in the display to tell you which way that's selected. There's an LED which flashes to let you know that the battery's low or that there's a new voice message. I'm not sure I want this thing to take voice messages. Apparently it can work as an answering machine. I don't want it to do that. I already have an answering machine in my mobile phone base unit, so I probably can turn that off somehow. On and off, again, this button's already been discussed. It turns on the Sentry functionality, and ringer determines whether or not the Sentry itself will ring, I think. So again, I have to read more of the manual to understand that. Going around the back, there's a test line. I don't know what it is here. Is it a flap? Oh. Tel-1 line 1. Don't know what that means. It's another set of jacks. And there's a tel and line here. Maybe, oh, maybe it has an internal splitter. Maybe I don't need to use another one. I'll read the book. Find out. That's the primary anyway. Place where the line plugs in on the right and the telephone or telephones plug in on the left. And on the bottom, you've got a speaker and a place for the 3 AAA cells that comprise the battery. Made in China. Well, that's kind of a joke. It just says RJ11 alternative wiring, but it doesn't seem to explain that anywhere. Maybe I'll go on their website. Maybe it'll have more information. Okay, upon putting in the battery, it said list empty, and it shows a couple of 4-digit numbers. Accept and reject is lit up, and the D code for default mode of operation is there. I don't know what these numbers mean at this point, but I'll fool around with it. I think the first thing to do is, I don't have a whitelist yet. I'm going to figure out what that's going to be. So I'm just going to try it cold. Let's see, I need to plug this in first. I've pushed the on-off button here to toggle Sentry on, Sentry off. I've got it off now. According to the manual, that should allow all calls to go through except those on the blacklist. So I've got the upper jack there, which is the one that's connected to the phone company. And that's going into the line input. And then the tel or phone output is going through the gray lead, this rat's nest, to my splitter, and then the base unit of my cordless phone also plugs in there. So if I dial this number on my mobile phone, or my mobile phone, cell phone, then it should ring through. We'll see if it does. Yes, it called through. I picked up my cordless phone and I'm talking to my cell phone. I can hear my voice on it across the room. So that seemed to work. Now I'm going to use the on-off button to toggle to Sentry on and try it again. Okay, the Sentry's ringing, you can hear it. So I am able to call my cell phone from my phone in the house, so it's working backwards to the Sentry, so that means all the connections are good. Okay, it's a little hard to see here, though I don't have any light over this unit, unfortunately. I can listen to the default so-called OGM, outgoing message. That's what callers get if they're not on my whitelist. So basically the way this thing is supposed to work, my understanding anyway, so far, is that if a caller comes in and they're on my blacklist, then nothing happens, they just don't get anywhere. If they are not on my blacklist, then this Sentry answers and plays the OGM or outgoing message, which says, hey, you know, if you're a telemarketer or something, hang up now, don't call back, get lost, whatever. But it gives them an option to push a button on their phone and leave a message, but they can't get beyond that. And if they're on my whitelist, then the call goes through as if this isn't even here, and my phone rings and I answer it. Right now, it seems by default, even if they push 0, I'm not sure I can answer it because my phone doesn't ring. That's the thing I have to delve into a little bit, find out if it can work that way. It's not that big a deal because most of my calls go to my answering machine anyway. It's just that I'd rather have them go to my main answering machine instead of to this. It's just one more thing to dick with every day when I come home. So hopefully I can make that a little different. But here's the outgoing message to hear how it sounds. I just double click this.
If you are a telemarketer or solicitor of any purpose, please hang up and remove our phone number from your list. Otherwise, press 0 and leave a message after the beep. Thank you.
So that's what you get there. And it's assuming, I think, that message was left. Oh no, it's not. It's just, that's it. They didn't leave a message. They didn't push 0. Of course, this is a simulation, but if it had been a real call and they didn't push anything, I think that's where it would end. There wouldn't be any lights flashing, any display here. So at least that works. Now I could customize it by holding down the record play key. I could record my own message that says something similar to that. It doesn't mention anything about pushing 0. I think that may be a fixed number. In other words, if you wanted them to push 9 or something instead, I'm not sure you can do that. I'll look into that some more too. So I'm going to try putting in a number to the whitelist. It has nothing in it right now. And the way to do that is to type in the number including the area code, but you don't have to push 1 in front of it according to the instructions. And then you push the accept button to accept and save it. You can also put it in and have a name appear on here, but I probably won't do that at this point. I'm just going to put in my own mobile number and see if that then allows it to ring through to my inside house number. So according to this, you just punch in the phone number on the keypad and then push the accept button to save it. And if I made a mistake, I can push the delete exit key to redo it. So let me do that, but I have to do it slightly off camera. Okay, I've entered my mobile number, and it shows on the left here a 1 in this number. So even though the manual doesn't actually say anything about these numbers, I'm guessing that since this is under the word accept, that it's saying I've got 1 number in the whitelist, and under reject I've got no numbers added to the reject list. That would be the blacklist, I think. So again, I'm just guessing at that, but I'm going to try calling in again from my mobile phone and see what happens now. Okay, now it did come through to my phone. There's an incoming call.
Call from wireless callers.
Display of my screen.
Call from wireless callers.
I'm not showing it, but it does display my mobile number on the
Call
display
from
of this.
wireless callers.
So I can pick this up and answer it. Hello? 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 And I can talk the other way. Hello? Hello? Yep, that's going through just fine. So that's working as expected. The whitelist worked. Call went immediately through. The Sentry did not ring. Instead, my internal phone rang. So that seems to be working just fine. Okay, I've programmed in 13 whitelist numbers. Pretty much the ones that are on my speed dial and in my home office phone. The ones that I most likely expect calls from, family members and close friends. And the entry method is quite simple. You make sure you're at this display, has to be in this display. You push the accept button and hold it for a few seconds, and it gives a underline all the way across the display, which is the invitation to type in the phone number with area code but no 1 in front of it. And when you've done that, you just push the accept button once. It leaves the number up there, but now you can type in the person's name. You can use all the characters across, but no more than that. And you just do the usual thing. If you want the letter A, you push the 2 button once. If you want B, you push it twice in quick succession. If you want C, you push it 3 times in quick succession. And then move on to the next letter using all these keys. If you make a mistake, you push the delete key once, it backs up. If you try typing the next letter too quickly, it thinks you're just doing quick succession on the previous one, and it'll give you some garbage and you'll have to back up and delete it. So you have to wait about a second or two after each letter is entered before the cursor moves to the next position and it flashes to show you that it's moved ahead. So that's pretty straightforward. Once it's here, I can either interrogate the blacklist or the whitelist. If I want to look at the blacklist, there's nothing in it right now. But if I push reject, it'll say list empty. Now it goes over here and I can push the accept button. I moved it off screen, but I pushed the accept button and now it shows the first number and name that I entered for my whitelist, and I can cursor up and down or scroll up and down and select them, delete them, etc. And after a few seconds it goes back and returns to this display. And I haven't had anybody else call me yet, but I have called myself from my mobile number, and it did go straight through without making me listen to the pre-recorded message. Right now I'm going to leave the pre-recorded message alone, I think. The outgoing message is fine with its robotic pre-recorded thing. It's not too personal. Later on I may change that. So to recap the way this seems to work, if a call comes in which is on the blacklist, or which it just determines from the way the call comes in, then it will just ignore the call, basically. If a call comes in that's not on the blacklist and looks okay, basically, but it's not on the whitelist, then it will play the outgoing message prompting a telemarketer to remove me from the list, as if they'd actually do that, but who knows, some of them might. The more legitimate ones might. And instructing them to push 0 in this case to advance. And it doesn't advance to ringing my phone, it just advances to allowing them to leave a message, which I can come back later and listen to. And if I say, no, that's bogus, that's bad, all I have to do is hit the reject button, and it'll permanently add that number to the blacklist. Now, with spoofed phone numbers, you wonder about that, right? Because spoofed phone numbers can be legitimate phone numbers that are just being spoofed. It's not necessarily the phone number of the person who's calling you, illegally in most cases. So you may not want to actually add it to the blacklist. You may just want to let it keep going to messages. But hopefully they won't leave messages because they'll be blocked by the first tier defense. So hopefully you're just getting people you don't have on your whitelist calling through, you know, doctors and things like that, leaving messages. At which point then you can say, oh yeah, that's my doctor's office calling me, I'm listening to their message, I'm going to add that to the whitelist right now. And then in the future they won't have a problem. They won't have to leave that message. They'll be able to get through and either make my phone ring or leave a message on my proper answering machine. So we'll see how that works. And then of course if they're on the whitelist, then it just rings straight through to my phone and they don't hear a recorded message or anything. I've decided to leave the yellow and black wires coming from this cable disconnected, because now both sides of this are active. One's the line side, one is the switched by the Sentry line for all the internal phones. I don't want to be hooking up something which doesn't go to a phone and I don't really know where the other end of it is. So I'm going to be tucking all this stuff up back into here, leaving that more or less alone. And then I got to put my boogered up panel. Okay, that's all back to normal. And of course, being a methodical person, I've updated my oft updated cheat sheet here, corrected some text, added things about disconnected lines, changed the wiring I moved to the terminal block, added notations about the Sentry and the splitter I used, and a couple other things, so hopefully it reflects the current status pretty accurately. Here's a possible gotcha. It says, can I set up the Sentry to where all the phones will ring when an unknown caller dials 0? And I don't know what that means. All the phones will ring when an unknown caller dials 0. My understanding of the way this works, and everything so far has said this, is if an unknown caller dials 0, they just go into the voice message system of the Sentry and the phones do not ring. But it's saying here that no, the unit does not have the capability to generate an AC current to ring all the phones when 0 is dialed. The only way around it is to record a custom greeting
that instructs the caller to dial 0, hang up, and call back in 30 seconds. I don't know how that works. But I've already tested this I've got 3 phones, 3 loads if you will, in my house. I've got the base unit for my cordless phone. I've got which is pretty much what I use when I'm in the house. I have handsets in, my office, my bedroom, the kitchen, other places in the house, all running off that base unit. They don't constitute a load on the phone line or on the Sentry's output. I do have my desk phone, which is a regular office landline phone. That's in parallel with the base unit, so that's a second load. And then I have my Chicago payphone in the garage, and I'm hoping that doesn't get jazzed by this. But I suppose if it does, the main reason I have that is so if I'm in the garage working and somebody calls me, I know they called me, because I don't usually keep my cell phone on me when I'm working on there. It's just too easy to get it damaged. I rely on the payphone to do that. But so I probably should do a sanity check and take my mobile phone out in the garage and see if the Sentry allows the ringer on that to ring, because it's not a solid state ringer, it's a physical bell ringer, I think. So I'm going to do that now. So there's my old Western Electric, I think it is, payphone taken out of a phone booth in Chicago. And it does ring. Hello? Hello? It works just fine. So the Sentry definitely works with at least one traditional hard bell ringer, at least one desk phone, and one base unit. At least it works to that degree, so that's a good sign. I don't have to worry about that. So my revised phone setup seems to be working more or less as intended. There were a couple of misunderstandings about how the Sentry was going to work, but they're not deal breakers, I don't think. The only thing that I wasn't too keen on and was a bit surprised by was that this unit acts as an answering machine for any call that comes in and they push 0. I assume that if they pushed 0, it would just ring the regular phones and I would answer it. Instead, it screens them and puts any message here, and then if I'm around when it happens, I can come over and immediately push accept, add their number to the approved list, and presumably pick up the phone and do it. But we'll see about that. I mean, that almost never happens, and almost all the people who normally call me are now on my approved list. I've got 1 or 2 more I'm going to add, actually. My primary doctor and my dentist, they do call me from time to time. I think it'd be good to have their numbers on here. But other than family, friends, and those people, that's probably enough for now. So this is a cautious endorsement, I guess. Only time will tell if I really like this. If it turns out that it's more hassle than it was worth, I don't even need to change the wiring in my house. I can just go and put a jumper wire between the upper and lower jacks on that wall plate, and it'll be back to the way it was as far as functionality goes, and then this would be out of the picture, but hopefully it'll do the trick. So here's a little blurb on the Tel-Sentry website. Our story. Nothing worse than uninvited spam phone calls interrupt your work, your sleep, your family time. As I searched for a solution, I quickly found that all the existing call blocking products on the market failed to solve the problem. They were all complicated to use, and worst of all, we'd still get unwanted phone calls at all hours of the day. That's when I decided to create the Sentry to put a stop to the telemarketer calls once and for all. At Tel-Sentry Inc., we've invented an easy-to-use blocker that's 99.9% effective at stopping unwanted calls and more reliable than any product on the market. All you have to do is plug it in. We have also been working on product development for the past several years and are proud to announce the latest Sentry 3. They need to update this because it's 3.1, but okay. With additional features such as custom voice recordings and a keypad for easier setup. The Sentry has brought peace and tranquility to thousands of homes across the country. It's so effective that we guarantee you'll be satisfied with the result. Signed, Sean, founder and CEO, Tel-Sentry Inc. And pictured here is a different version of the product. It's similar to the one I bought, but it's a little different. The buttons are different at the very least. The display is probably about the same, so maybe this is the version 3 and the one I've got is the 3.1. I don't know. This does use these little rubbery buttons, which can be kind of annoying to use, whereas the ones on there now still may have rubber buttons underneath them, but they have a little better tactile feel. Anyway,